Call the CUB Board of Directors meeting to order. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I make that motion?
Do I hear a second? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to approval of vouchers. Do I hear a motion to approve the vouchers?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. And moving on to approval of monthly reports, and I'll turn that over to General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I can direct your attention to the revenue expense summary, and I'm just going to make a comment before I ask Dudley to expound a little bit. But this is the month, these are what we call transitional months, and this is when revenue versus power costs make a big difference. We try to get by in the positive if we can. And we essentially were flat in electric. That still puts us significantly above the actual forecast by 964,000. And certainly in water, we're way ahead of the budget also. What I wanted to point out to you, because I do this periodically, although we have no control over the amount of electricity people use, we do have control over some of the cost of that, and that's the things that we do with our virtual power plant and everything else. But the operating and maintenance expense, to forecast that, and if you look at what Dudley had forecast at 19,183,000 is what was forecast. Where we are actually today is 19,299,000. If you add that up, that's off by 0.6%. Now we'll look at it again next month, because then we'll have a full year. But that is pretty fantastic doing that, and I just want to highlight that to you. We have got a very fine-tuned forecasting machine sitting on that side of the room. So Dudley, with that introduction, try not to mess it up. You can say whatever you want about the statements.
Thank you. And for the month of May, we had a net loss of $12,000 in the electric department. And as Greg said, these are the transition months. We try to break even, and that's where the demand component of the power bill comes into play. And Todd and I looked at this pretty close earlier today, and at the end of May, there were some hot days that really drove the demand cost up. So the demand component of the power bill was 34%, right, Todd? Whereas last month it was 29%, and that difference makes a big difference. So if you look at the difference between revenue and power cost a year ago versus last year, the difference was 379,000 more in margin because the weather was mild all month. Those one or two hot days in a month or one or two real cold days in the winter months really can drive your power cost up. So that's where the big difference comes in.
It's the highest hour in the month.
Yeah.
Is what you bid. So on the last day before they read the meter, if it spikes, you're paying that for the whole month, and you don't have the KWH to back up the KW. And that KW is the demand component he's talking about.
And that's why it's this virtual power plant that we do every month comes into play so much. That's, if you look at the month of May, that was $79,000, and without that virtual power plant, our power cost would have been $79,000 more, which would have meant we were $79,000 more in less margin and $79,000 more in the red. So that's the importance of that, and we show you that every month. But I can't stress enough how much impact that has on our margin every single month. As Greg said, our expenses are pretty much on track. We're $964,000 ahead of my forecast, and $670,000 is revenue less power cost. gained this year. Part of that is the credits we've received and so forth, and the virtual power plant. All that is great news. The water department had a net change in assets of $62,000. A big portion of that is the capital contributions. $27,000 of that 37 is a contribution made by the Aspire Park towards the meters and things, infrastructure that we have to put in over there. But the water department is now 56,000 ahead of its forecast. I expect both departments to have a big month next month, and all's good. All's good. Unless you got any specific questions, I'm done.
Anyone have any questions? Do I hear a motion to approve?
I make that motion.
Here a second.
Second.
Motion second, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to project status report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're tracking 3 work orders in electric. One of them you've seen for quite some time on Carroll Hollow. We have finished that. That's 100% project is finished. We're now just collecting payroll, overhead, stores, and transportation to close that work order out. It was finished well before the end of June. 2 new work orders that have come into focus are 2 that the board approved last month. They are the Lonesome Dove Road and Stony Fork. They have essentially just started, but we don't have any doubt that we'll have them completed by the end of September. Unless you've got a question on either one of those, that's all I have on project status.
Any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to approval of purchase orders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a couple that we want you to look at. One is the transformers, and I'll draw your attention to the savings and the calculation and remind you what we go through, because what we're recommending in terms of purchase is $464 above the low bid from one company. And what we do is we have everyone bid en masse, and then we have them cherry-picked out, and they have to bid by item. And we have 4 items for them to consider. And Gresco, as you see, was at $145,206, but we're recommending $145,670 because of the calculation that we do on the transformers for line loss. And then we run that out through the life of the transformer, and when we do that, we believe that we'll not only make up the $464, but in addition, we'll put another $6,462 on top of that. If you remember from the line loss that we talked about last month, where our savings, as we looked at utilities that surround us, was between almost about $500,000 and $1.7 million that we saved had we their numbers for line loss. This is part of what makes our line loss as low as it is we've got the capability in-house to do this calculation to determine whether or not the line losses are overshadowed by the reduction in cost. And in this case, the losses were too high. So I recommend that the board approve both Gresco and United Sales for these transformers, because they are what we consider the best bid, not necessarily the lowest bid, of $145,670.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? I just had a question on the delivery. Is that in line with the normal delivery time, or are you seeing this?
They vary depending, because these are pretty standard transformers, but delivery time we do take into account. That's why we put out there our horizon is further out there, So these deliveries don't bother us at all.
Good.
Many of the items that we have, though, we have had long
That's what
delivery
I was gonna
times.
ask. Have you seen a delay in logistics?
We have, and we have, at times like this, we have shared our good fortune by having a sufficient stock with friendly utilities that apparently didn't do that. So,
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Moving on to the ductile iron poles. Did I say
yes,
that
sir, ductile iron. You notice, as you go up and down the street, you're seeing these gray steel-looking poles that are going up there. And we're putting more and more out there, as we made the decision years ago to try to bring everything out from behind the barns out onto the road where we can get buckets to them, and as we police or we go down and we'll scout, we can see lying down and we're not out and back in people's yards. We're doing that. All of the work orders that you see, and we're using a lot of this aerial cable, we're all moving those out to the right-of-way, the road right-of-way. So that's been going on for many years, and it's paid off tremendously. What we're doing now is, as we identify what we call critical poles, double circuit poles, poles that have a lot of equipment on it, ones that you don't want to see laying over at 2 o'clock in the morning. We are identifying those poles, and when we change those out, we're changing those out to ductile iron. And that'll put us to 2 generations down before they'll have to deal with that again. So I remember one of the first ones we did was right there where McDonald's is. I mean, there's everything we own in CUB is on that pole. And it get hit by a car, and of course, the tension on it snapped it, and we put it back up, and it hadn't been too long after that, another car hit it, and now there's a steel pole up there. So that's our intention, and that's why you see so many. We're gonna have these in stock, and as we identify and change out and reroute some of these things that we're doing, there'll be some of these ductile iron poles associated with that. So with that, I recommend the board approve the bid for the ductile iron poles, Border States, at $109,838.52.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? The motion is second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. On to item 8 on the agenda, approval of work order.
Yes, we're looking for approval for work order 1298 in the electric department, and that is more aerial cable. It's about 7/10 of a mile. It's on South Dark Hollow Road. We budgeted and planned for $210,000 for this project. When Todd and his folks went through the final engineering, they determined with contingency that this work order can be done for $203,755, and this is all part of our ongoing upgrading all of our cable throughout our system. So I recommend the board approve this budgeted item of $203,755 for aerial cable on South Dark Hollow Road, work order number 1298.
Hear a motion to approve?
You said 55 twice, it says 75 on here, is that
I'm sorry.
is that something we need to worry about?
I said 55, I'm not sure.
It's about 775.
775?
Bottom line cost.
203,775. What I'm saying, 755? Hold it to 755.
I'll find
But thank you.
$20 somewhere.
Thank you, because we would have corrected that in the minutes and not even told you about it. So thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the work order?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say, well, is there any discussion, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Item 9, approval of bad debt write-off.
Mr. Chairman, annually, we go through and we identify those accounts that have gone through our normal process, and we have identified those as being uncollectible. And Dudley has done a Herculean job, especially this past year, and our flex pay has really paid off. But Dudley, you might want to make comment to how the pandemic year has affected us and
Sure.
what we're asking the board to approve to write off.
Sure, the write-offs for the year are, and the detail is back here, and it's $75,974 is the accounts we're writing off, which I'm very pleasantly surprised with the pandemic and everything. I expected that to be double that, but we set up payment agreements and we set up different things, and the people came through and paid their bills. I'm sure the extra money they received from the government helped them keep them up. But I'm very pleased with that. But we attribute a lot of this to our Flex Pay program, which is our prepay program, which we started in 2013. As you see back here in 2009, we were at $327,000. We figured out that people that skipped tend to be 2 years or less on our system. They were transient. And by starting our prepay with our AMI system, we were able to get them to pay ahead, get on the prepay system, which we sell like a gas tank. You put gas in your tank, and as it winds down, it tells you you're low, and then you come and you buy some more. That's why you see this kiosk out here going so much. People can come up with $25 a week really easily, but when it's $100 a month, then they have a tougher time, and they get behind. They don't pay it. They got the late fees. Then all the next thing they write a bad check. Now they're $200 behind, and then it gets cheaper to move than to pay their bills. The prepay program, after 2 years, you saw that started dwindling way down, and that's the impact that had. We have about 2,500 customers on FlexPay, and that's about 10% of our residential customers. It's holding there. It's pretty much, that's where it's going to hold, because none of you guys are going to get on prepay. You have no reason to, and when they come through the door and it's pay a $300 deposit, or you can get on prepay and just pay it like a gas tank, they get on the prepay, unless they want to try to burn us, and then they get on the old system. But you see the impact it's made on the total write-offs, on the recoveries. When we first started it, we saw some big recoveries, and then they've kind of dwindled down. But the reason they're dwindling down is because we're writing off less. We have less to recover. And so when they come back on the system, we still collect that. We put them on we call it a debt recovery. And for every dollar they put in their gas tank, 30 cents goes to their old debt. So, and you would be surprised how quickly that gets paid off. If you take the difference, so you take your total write-offs plus what you recovered, that's $39,000 net write-offs on $84 million in sales, 0.047%. So that's less than a nickel per $100 that you're writing off of your revenues, which is, I mean, even the 32 cents back in 2009 was really good, but that's unbelievable, really, in my opinion. And that's what that program's done. It benefits the customer a lot too. It helps them budget themselves. They don't pay late fees anymore. They don't have to pay reconnect fees anymore. Everything is so automated. If they don't pay and it cuts them off, they come to that kiosk, or they go to Walmart and pay Western Union, or they pay online. Within about 10 minutes, the system automatically restores their power. It's a great system. I'm thrilled with it.
What's the TVA average or norm for percent of revenue?
On write-offs, I couldn't tell you, but I know it's a lot higher than that.
Well, I'm thinking as much as 3.5%. So you go with 3.5%. I know industry's higher than that, but you go with 3.5%, and you're looking at $80 million. You can add that up, and you can see, we've written off over $400,000 in 1 year. We've written off over $400,000. So you look back over time, I mean, that's, when I first came here, the percentage was probably as much as 5.5, when we started doing that, because we weren't collecting like we should. I mean, I can give you names of folks where they didn't pay for 6 months. I mean, that's not fair. It's not fair to the people that pay. And it's really not fair to them, because then when you finally draw the line, they can't come up with 6 months worth of utility payments. You force them to leave and you force them to move. So when we started this, Dudley was on the tech board at CSA, and he piloted this program because we were looking at late fees and trip fees for our customers, for those that were struggling with money. What they were paying in late fees and trip fees added up to a month and more of what their utility service was. So they were like paying 13 and a half months worth of utility charges in a year because they couldn't meet their payment. Then they become past due. Then they have a late charge on top of that. Then they do trip fees, where we have to go out and knock on the door, say, pay us or we're going to have to cut you out. And if they don't, then we cut them out. Then they have to pay a reconnect fee to get the power back on and up their deposit. So it was just so difficult. And how can we best serve our customers? And this is the way to do it, because they're not surprised. They track this within $5. They know what's going on, and anybody can get $20 from a relative, but you can't get $700 from a relative, and $20 gets you back on, and you're not paying zero late charges. You pay zero trip fees, and you pay zero reconnects. If you're in Florida and your neighbor says your lights just went out, you can go in a Walmart in Florida and you can pay that bill, and in 10 minutes your lights will automatically come back on. That's 24/7. It's 24/7. And Dudley was the one that worked all of that up, and then when he got off the tech board with CSA, Todd, we got on there. And again, there are 100+ utilities that use CSA. So, I mean, how many's on the tech board?
10.
10. They wanted Todd and Dudley, which I wouldn't give them, because, they're going to have to figure some of that stuff out themselves. But we help shape this is a part of our billing service. We help shape how they interact with all of these utilities to improve the services that they provide. And it's made a real big difference. So all of this is really good, because it's really good for our customers. These folks here that are on this, they love it. They love it because they understand it, they work it, and they're never behind, and if they do get caught, they can get back on, and it doesn't cost them anything more than what they're using. And that's where Dudley even designed this gas tank thing to better explain. If you got a lot of ways far to go, put a lot of gas in. So if you're going to use a lot of electricity, you're going to have something in there. But if you're tight, just start shutting things down, and you can see that usage go way down and stretch that out until the next payday. And that's what they do. It's a great feature for our customers, I think.
Dudley, will you include these slides and what we provide City Council for the CUB report?
Sure.
Okay. Appreciate it. Now, do I hear a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? Any comments? I think this is one of the several things that we do that it's wonderful, but the impact for ratepayers and the impact of the individuals that take advantage of it, to me, is it outweighs the great financial benefit we also receive. But this is just doing right by people.
Right.
And coming up with an innovative way to meet a certain demographic that just sometimes can't get right.
That's,
And so we've made it easier for them to understand things, and you know, I've sit here and you can see them pull in
Right.
when we're at this board meeting, and that's what they're doing. They're walking
Wearing
over
that-
that wall.
wearing that out.
That's the one that came to the door in the meeting last month. She was trying to pay her bill using the kiosk and had an issue.
But I think it's great, and I plan on highlighting the flex pay program we have in this month's city council report. So thank you. There's a motion. It's been seconded. Any other further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Other business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to remind you that next month, August, and hopefully it'll seem longer between this board meeting and the next one. This one really moved up quickly on us. But next month, the annual review of our self-funded health program. We try to bring that to you at least once a year. I'd bring it to you if there was a problem. I wouldn't wait till the end of the year saying, well, we only do this once a year, but we're continue to be in very good shape on that. But we'll review that with you. We'll show you what the expenditures were, the claims were. We'll show what we've tied into administrative costs, and we'll show you what our funding ratio is and what our reserves are, which are pretty substantial. And that'll be next month. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Is there any other business to come before this board? Hearing none, I'll adjourn.